Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, we are answering the question, is Gardevoir GX better with Sylveon? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have got two Gardevoir decks doing the rounds at the moment. And one question which a lot of people have been asking, and which lately I've become very curious about. Is it better to play it with Sylveon, or is it better to play it without Sylveon? Now, in the early builds, it was very clearly Gardevoir without Sylveon. And it's not like we had the choice, ladies and gentlemen, because Gardevoir came around in Burning Shadows, whereas we've had Sylveon since Guardians Rising. So we've always had the option of playing Sylveon. For as long as we've had Gardevoir, we've also had Sylveon. But in the early days, everybody just played Gardevoir. Now, what we're going to do here, we're going to use the results of Hartford Regionals. And shout out to Limitless TCG for collating the results of this particular Regionals. And the reason for that is it's the most recent of the standard format regional championships. And if we look at the results of Hartford Regionals, there were 8 Gardevoir decks that made top 32. 1/4 of the top cut was Gardevoir decks. It is still, as far as I'm concerned, the de facto best deck in the format. If you disagree, come at me in the comments. But you know the cardinal rule, ladies and gentlemen. Be nice. Of those 8 Gardevoir decks that made top cut, 3 of them played Sylveon and 5 of them didn't. Now, that's not necessarily indicative, because we don't know how many people played with Sylveon and how many didn't. It could be that only 10% of the Gardevoir decks at the tournament played Sylveon, so 3 making top 32 was amazing. What we do know is that the only one that made top 8 was Sam Chen, who cut with Sylveon. Although, to be fair, in 9th place was Kenny Britton without. So, both of them are good. Both of them can make top cut. With Sylveon is the only one that made top 8, but without Sylveon had more top 8s. So, what we're going to do is we're going to compare the two lists now. And we're going to use, as examples, Sam Chen's 4th place list as our Gardevoir Sylveon list, and Kenny Britton's 9th place non-Sylveon list. And again, shout out to Limitless TCG for providing the deck list for these. Go and check them out. It's a really good website, run by lovely people, and I can confirm that because I know the people that run the website. They are lovely. So first things first, the basics, just for those of you who may be slightly unaware, who haven't played this deck as much as some of the rest of us have. Gardevoir is the main Pokemon, and nobody's arguing whether Gardevoir's good. Gardevoir is good. There is no real counter-argument. The ability allows you to attach an extra fairy energy from your hand to any of your Pokemon per turn. That's amazing. The attack does 30 damage for every energy attached to both active Pokemon, punishes your opponent for attaching lots of energy, but you can also attach a fairy with your ability, and then a double colourless as your attachment for the turn, and then you're just doing a flat 90 before you do anything else, and that's if no energy's on them. And then you've got Twilight GX that allows you to put 10 cards from your discard back into your deck. Really handy against something like Gardevoir, where you can use all your items early game and then shuffle them back in to hurt your opponent. Although, side note, if you do that, your opponent might N you, and then you draw all those items again, which would be sad. Why do people play Sylveon? Well, first of all, we've got the Sun and Moon Eevee. If you attach a fairy energy, you get to search for Sylveon and evolve straight away. That's great. And secondly, you've got, 110 for free energy is fine, but you've got Plea GX. Put 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon and all cards attached to them into your opponent's hand. This is amazing. Let's say you're playing against something like a Metagross deck. Metagross is terrible for Gardevoir. So what you can do is just use Plea GX, make your opponent pick up their only 2 Metagross after you Guzma something like an Alolan Vulpix into the active, and then all of a sudden they don't have the Pokemon to KO you, so you can then just start KOing everything else while they're trying to get reset up. It's a great GX attack. So Sylveon here really provides 2 functions. Magical Ribbon for a single energy, and remember, you go second, attach an energy to Eevee, you're rolling straight away turn 1. You get to search for any free cards. Search for your rare candy Gardevoir to evolve up. Search for your double colourless energy, etc, etc. You can even then search for a floatstone to attach to Sylveon to get out the active so you can be attacking with Gardevoir. That is amazing. Now your opponent is going to try and play an N, but it forces your opponent to play an N. They want to play a Sycamore, but instead they're playing an N. They want to play a Guzma to KO a bench Pokemon of yours. Instead they're playing an N. This is cool, ladies and gentlemen. Even if your opponent plays an N, you're still getting a hand refresh every turn, and that's not bad for a single energy. Sooner or later they won't be able to play the N, and you are going to be off. The downside of playing Sylveon is you have to cut other cards from your deck. And I've played the mirror match of this a couple times, and there's no guarantee, because here's the thing. On the one hand, Sylveon helps you set up faster in the mirror, that's good. On the other hand, Sylveon is a 2-prize Pokemon that isn't really taking prizes. So if your opponent gets a good start without Sylveon, then they can come along and KO Sylveon and take the first couple of prizes. Sylveon has a lower HP than Gardevoir. It takes 7 energy rather than 8 on both the actives to take a KO here. So there is an argument that the non-Sylveon version is better in the mirror because you just go with Gardevoir straight away. Having said that, you've got Magical Ribbon to set up, and think how great Plea is going to be making your opponent pick up 2 Gardevoir in the mirror. Not to mention the fact that if those Gardevoir have been rare candied, then they've lost the candies, and it's going to be hard to find more candies to evolve up again. So, arguments for and against so far. More streamlined with Gardevoir. Potentially early prizes on the Sylveon, but you don't set up as well, you don't get Plea GX. So let's look at the two lists side by side here. The energy is the same, and you'll see the lists here are very same. 4 Sycamore, 4 N, 3 Guzma, 4 Rare Candy, 4 Ultra Ball, 2 Field Blower, 2 Choice Band. Very, very similar. But there's a few things that start creeping in with Kenny Britton's Gardevoir list that you don't see with Sam Chen's Gardevoir Sylveon, because he's got to play 2 EV2 Sylveon. You see that there is a third Curlier, meaning it's more likely you're going to be able to set up Gardevoir if you can't draw into your rare candy. We see that there is an Oranguru as well as a 1-1 Octillery. Both decks are playing 1-1 Octillery, both decks are playing 3 Tapu Lele, both decks are playing 1 Gallade, all of which help with setup. But Oranguru allows you to draw until you've got 3 cards in your hand. So if you can get your hand low enough, this gives you extra draw power that the Sylveon deck doesn't have. So Kenny Britton can maybe draw 1 card with Oranguru, then play 1 or 2, then draw more cards with Octillery, whereas Sam Chen isn't able to do that. He's got to draw with Octillery, and then just go ahead and use Sylveon's Magical Ribbon. You also find an Alolan Vulpix in Kenny's list that you don't find in Sam's, but then again, Alolan Vulpix really is just a low-rent Magical Ribbon. It is essentially a way of searching for 2 Pokemon, and a lot of the time you're going to search for Gardevoir and hope you can draw the rare candy. You're going to be doing a very similar thing you'll do to Magical Ribbon. One thing I really like about Alolan Vulpix is, and I've said this many a time, turn 1 you're often going to be using a Tapu Lele to search out a Bridget. So what you do then is you grab your Bridget, search for 3 Pokemon, one of which is going to be an Alolan Vulpix, and then if you've got a Routes in the active, or if you've got a Tapu Lele in the active, you can just attach an energy retreat, and then you've got a 0 energy beacon. You can't with Oranguru, but other than that, you're good. Whereas if you're Sam Chen, and if you're playing the Sylveon list, you can turn 1, Bridget for an Eevee, attach an energy, get a Sylveon, but you've then got to get it into the active. And that's a huge problem because you don't have any free retreating basics. You play 2 Floatstone, but if you want a turn 1 Sylveon going second, not only do you need the EV and the energy, but you also need a Floatstone to get one of your Pokemon out the active. Whereas to use an Alolan Vulpix, all you need is just a Bridget and an energy, and to not start Oranguru. Oranguru is a terrible starter. Bit of a pain, but there's nothing you can do about it. Kenny is also playing a Mr. Mime here, which protects your bench from stuff like Tapu Koko, which is huge because decks like Golisopod will try and use Tapu Koko for a couple of turns so that they can then bring you into range of getting a KO. Or other decks may well be using this. Something like a Tapu Bulu, for instance, can only hit 210 with a choice band, so they might use a Tapu Koko to bring all of your Gardevoir down to 210 with Flying Flip, and then get the KO. I love the options Kenny Britton's deck has got. I love having Oranguru and Octillery. I think Alolan Vulpix is great turn 1 and Mr. Mime is a great tech. Not to mention that he's also found room for 1 extra Ace Roller, which gives a bit of extra healing. Overall, I tend to come down on the Gardevoir without Sylveon, because I love the Alolan Vulpix, I love the Oranguru, I love the Mr. Mime, I love the extra healing. You get to play these extra cards. But let's be super clear about this. The Sylveon deck has Magical Ribbon. If you can get that going early, and if you don't get End, there's no competition. It's way better than Alolan Vulpix. You are more likely, statistically, to be able to use Alolan Vulpix's Beacon going second on turn 1 than you are to use Magical Ribbon. But when you can use Magical Ribbon, it's so much better. And Plea GX, against something like a Metagross, if you look at Kenny's list, if you play Metagross, you're like, oh. Whereas if you look at Sam's list, you play Metagross and you're thinking, hang on a second. If I can maybe take a couple of early prizes, wait for him to get a couple of Metagross, play a Guzma and then use Plea to get rid of 2 of those Metagross, and then get a couple more prizes, and then 1 big KO with a Gardevoir, I think I can win this. That is what you get from the Sylveon list. I love the consistency of not playing with Sylveon. But the options with Magical Ribbon and Plea, especially if you can get a Floatstone and get a turn 1 Magical Ribbon, are so good. And here's the thing. Personally, I am a fan of not playing Sylveon, because I like the extra cards you get to play. And I don't love my chances of a turn 1 Magical Ribbon. But honestly, I cannot be mad at you for playing Sylveon. Let's face it, the best deck at Hartford Regionals with Gardevoir was Sam Chen's 4th place list. And it did play Sylveon. Ladies and gentlemen, if ever there was a video where I needed your opinion in the comments, this is that video. Tell me which of these lists you prefer. In the comments. Go nuts! Be nice. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, you should, they're awesome, and I will answer all of your questions. Then go and hit me up at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.